The views and opinions expressed on the Veterans in Politics show and podcast are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of Vegas All Net Radio, its affiliates, or its parent company.
Well, this is Steve Sanson and Jim Jonas with Veterans in Politics. Today, we're going to have probably 5 guests, but 4 guests we're going to have is Ross Miller, Nevada Secretary of State, and George Harris, Nevada State Director for Newt Gingrich for U.S. President. And in the second hour of our show, we're going to have Judge Deborah Lippis, who's a Las Vegas Justice Court judge, and Cynthia Dustin-Cruz, who's a Las Vegas Justice Court candidate. Hey, Jim, what's going on?
Not much, Steve. Just another Saturday afternoon. I had to get up real early this morning at 9 o'clock to go caucus, do my patriotic duty. A lot of people were wondering why I would even bother to go caucus, because a lot of Republicans just assume that Mitt Romney is going to win the state handily. But being the good patriot I am, I went out and did my patriotic duty, voted for who I would think would be the best Republican nominee to represent the Republicans. And I think I made the right pick. A couple people, I let them know what my decision was, and they disagreed with me a little bit. But it'll be interesting to talk to George Harris, because George Harris might have an interesting take on who I voted for. And we can banter back and forth a little bit about if we think Mr. Gingrich can actually beat President Obama in this upcoming election, which, whether it's Gingrich or any of the other Republican candidates, I will definitely be voting for whoever the nominee is on the Republican ticket, just because I don't think Obama has kept his promise of turning the economy around. But we'll see. That's all I really have to talk about today. How about you, Steve?
Well, who exactly did you pick for president? Are you going to share that?
Yes, I voted for Newt Gingrich. I think certain people don't believe that, or call some of his ethics into question. But I hate to say it, for the first time I've been voting, I'm willing to overlook some of that right now. I just believe we really need someone smart who's got the solutions, and I believe Newt Gingrich is that guy. I just want to see somebody who's intelligent that I think can fix the issues. I'm not so concerned about the so-called ethics complaints that others had about him. So that's who I picked, and we'll see how it goes.
Well, you know what? I went into the caucus. Going to vote for Rick Santorum, and then while I was there, kind of changed it, and I went with Ron Paul, believe it or not. But just because I voted one way and Jim voted another way, it has no reflection on the Veterans of Politics International as a whole. It's just our individual vote on the candidates that are running for Republican president. We're still the organization. The organization has not endorsed any presidential candidate, so everybody that's a member of Veterans of Politics is up to them to vote as they see fit as far as their individual way of voting. But with that said, Jim, I just want to plug 2 things. One, the Veterans Ball and Gala is next Saturday, February 11th. From 5:30 to 11 p.m. at the Plaza. If you have not received your tickets, please get them at www.veteransinpolitics.com, or you can go ahead and mail in a check to P.O. Box 28211, Las Vegas, Nevada 89126. And if anybody wants to see the judicial candidates that are going to be running in this year's election, they're going to be at the Marine Corps League from 11 to 4 p.m. on February 25th. That's another Saturday. And the Veterans in Politics are going to be doing their endorsement interview. So that's all I got to say about that, Jim.
Yeah, and next Saturday should be a good time. I'll be doing the show solo next Saturday because Steve will be over at the plaza getting stuff set up and ready. And then after that, I will be going over there. I'll be going over there to participate in this ball. I'm really looking forward to it. Very exciting. We actually last night, Steve and I were at the Marine Corps League, and we saw Dr. Paul there. And he was giving a speech. But we also ran into somebody else that I hadn't seen in a while, and that's former Congresswoman Dina Titus. And she actually said she wanted to be on the show, so we'll see if we can get her booked and get her on the show. You know, Steve, it would be an interesting show with me interviewing what I consider to be a liberal Democrat. And she knows how conservative I am, too, but she's still willing to come on the show. So just like with Gillespie, willing to come on the show even though he knew that we didn't agree with a lot of his issues. I really commend these people that know that ideologically we don't, or I may not agree with them, but they're still willing to come on and answer my question. So we'll see if we can't get that booked. That would be an exciting show. And really, that's all I have, Steve. You got anything else?
Yeah, because you just mentioned Ron Paul. We went and visit with him at the Veterans Rally at the Marine Corps League last night. But also, we visited with Newt Gingrich a couple days ago at Ahern, which was interesting as well. And hopefully, we'll be able to see all the presidential candidates. I know Mitt Romney will be on the Red Rock today, and I believe that we are scheduled to go out there and visit with him as well, represent Veterans in Politics as a whole organization. And we have not been able to see Rick Santorum. I know we had some events to go to, and then other things came up, but we'll see what happens. So let's go take a commercial break, Jim, and we'll be back momentarily with Ross Miller, Nevada Secretary of State.
This public service announcement is brought to you by Veterans in Politics International. The Veterans in Politics mission is to teach, educate, organize, and awaken our veterans and their families to select, support, and vote intelligently for a better world, and to protect ourselves from our own governments and a culture of corruption, and to be the political voice for those in other groups that do not have one.
There are too many homeless veterans, and more help is needed from the VA. Every veteran service organization post should adopt a local homeless veteran.
The funding of VA medical centers is inadequate, and building a VA hospital in southern Nevada is moving at a slow pace. The budget has been flatlined for too many years. The VA is too quick to deny claims and too slow to help veterans gather records in support of claims.
Local politicians ignore veterans and their issues. They perceive a lack of organization among their local veterans and that it won't hurt them at election time. Veterans too often vote party, not veteran issues. All veterans should vote in every election.
The news media give inadequate coverage to veteran issues and events. You must send letters to the editor and voice this concern.
Please contact your members of Congress and Senate and urge them to co-sponsor key legislation in supporting our veterans.
Please support Veterans in Politics. And to get more information, go to www.veteransinpolitics.com.
Hey you, this is Vince here on the Talk with Vince show, where no subject is off the table. We'll explore the depths of your mind. Spirituality, we talk it. Enlightenment, we talk it. Politics, we talk that too. Ufology, you want it, you got it. Conspiracy facts, we're on it. Sex, we talk it. So join me every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. for Talk with Vince here on VegasAllNetRadio.com. Talk that will blow your mind.
While growing up, I've always asked my family, who is my father? I was told the name of a man. When I became older, I looked for this man and found him. He thought that I was his son as well, but after a DNA test, it was discovered that my family was lying to me all my life. I pressured my family to give me the real identity of my father. I then became suspicious and took my grandfather's DNA. After I buried my grandfather, 2 days later I discovered that my grandfather was in fact my biological father. I questioned myself and asked, what is my purpose on this earth? I should have never been conceived. But when I look at my 4 children, I knew that everything happens for a reason. This is Steve Sanson. Find your identity.
Gentlemen, start your engines!
That's the sound of On Wheels Now, every Tuesday at 6 p.m.
If you like cars,
The smell of gasoline and rubber,
or just love motorsports and auto racing,
On Wheels Now is your inside look at local motorsports.
so don't miss the action.
We'll keep you in the loop with the latest local racing news.
We're race car drivers too, so join me, Michael.
And Mike, Tuesday at 6 p.m. Find us at onwheelsnow.com.
All right, great. Then it's a date. As Miss Nevada, my schedule can be really busy at times, but there is one activity I had to put on my calendar, and that's the Veterans Valentine Ball and Gala. February 11th is your chance to help local veterans meet with the state's dignitaries and feel the love for Valentine's Day. So, bring your sweetheart down to the Plaza Hotel on February 11th at 5:30 p.m. for a dinner, dance, and silent auction. Visit veteransinpolitics.com to purchase your tickets. I've got my date. Do you?
Well, we're back. This is Steve Sanson and Jim Jonas with Veterans in Politics. We have live in studio Ross Miller, Nevada Secretary of State. How you doing today, Ross?
Good. Thanks for having me again.
Not a problem. Could you give us bio about yourself, a little synopsis?
Sure. Grew up in both parts of the state, really. Born in Vegas, but grew up in northern Nevada. Finished up high school down in Vegas. Then spent a year playing basketball in Mexico before I went off to Stanford to do my undergrad. After Stanford, I went to law school and got my MBA at the same time at Loyola. And after getting out of law school and business school, started my career as a criminal prosecutor down in Clark County, one of the busiest courthouses in the country. When in 2006, I ran for Secretary of State and was fortunate enough to get elected. So I've been in that position for about 5 years.
Your father was the governor for how long?
From 88 to 98, 10 years. So he's the longest-serving governor because he slipped in under the radar and got 2 years as acting governor.
So did that help, like, mold you to be in the political arena, so to speak?
You know, I guess insanity runs in the family. Getting into politics after watching, my dad go through it. But the benefit from it is that I grew up sitting around the dinner table talking about issues and had a real passion for the policy side of public service. The political side is something different, and so I think I went into it with my eyes open as to what you can expose yourself and your family to. So you have to be very committed to the ultimate goal and of what you want to accomplish in public service, and have to be willing to accept the political side that comes with it.
Hey, some folks was concerned that the troops and the family of military servicemen overseas were not receiving information for this caucus. What do you got to say about that? Or do you have anything to do with that, so to speak?
I don't have anything to do with it. The caucus is run by the political parties, and my experience is that most Nevadans don't like the caucus process until you explain them the fact that if we want to have a presidential primary, the taxpayers have to foot the bill. And so this is a process that's run entirely by the political parties. And so, if there are concerns about whether or not military men and women overseas are being disenfranchised or not allowed to participate fully in the caucus, those complaints are better directed towards the political parties.
How come we don't have the primary regular elections here for presidential candidates?
Primarily cost. Some states do that. New Hampshire obviously does a presidential primary. They're first in the country. Many states have presidential primaries. Our primary is not till June. So obviously there's some benefit to being earlier in the calendar and having the presidential contenders out here campaigning before the nominees decided. We could switch to a presidential primary and the state could run the election. It would just cost a couple $1 million, and during these lean times, I don't see anybody willing to spend that since we don't have the funds to pay for it.
That brings me to another. Sorry, Jim. That brings me to another question. Since the caucus is left up to the political parties, and it's not a state-run election, that means the electoral NRS codes don't apply. Do they? Because let me give you a situation that I saw today. There was a assembly candidate. He has not filed yet, and he's wearing the button that says "Vote for so and so assembly candidate," and they told him that he had to remove that button, and I was a little confused because one, it was not a regular electoral process, and two, that assembly candidate was not on the ballot. So could you tell me if that person that told him to remove it was correct, or it was because they said it was an NRS, and I have not seen an NRS, and NRS don't apply to caucuses because it's a regular party function. Could you explain that to me a little bit?
In a regular election, candidates are not allowed to campaign within 100 feet of the polling place. This obviously is not a state-run election, so the party can dictate that the rules of its caucus as it sees fit, and that's controlled by the First Amendment freedom of association for the political party. So, they can certainly put forth a rule that would, is in essence mirror the NRS, which says that you're not allowed to campaign in the caucus spot.
But they would have to put forth a rule in front of the state party convention, and they have to vote on it, so to speak, right? Like they do in any political party.
I can't get into the party rules. I have, each party's different.
How does it work for the Democrat when the Democrats do the caucuses?
Typically, the rules are established through the state convention, and that would control the caucus process. And in some instances, the individual caucus director of the polling location would be in charge and have some discretion in terms of the rules. That appeared to be the case with certain polling locations today at the Republican caucus, allowing some members of the media and other areas, members of the media being excluded.
Okay. So in the Democratic caucus, is there such a rule if somebody's wearing a badge representing that they're a candidate for another race if they're voting in the presidential caucus?
I have no idea. These are party-run affairs, and I try to stay out of the party business. Obviously this is a partisan office that I hold, but I see it as nonpartisan. So this is their deal, their show. I let them set the rules and stay out of their hair as much as I can.
Okay. Jim?
Well, Ross, that was one of the main questions I wanted to propose to you. Why of all the political seats that I could think of, I think yours would be the last one I would want to be in. Just for the simple fact that, it's probably hands down one of the most important, obviously, because you certify the votes and things of that nature. But it's kind of one of those you're darned if you do, darned if you don't type things, because if you make a call, even if it's legally correct decision to make, but it's a tough one, say, and it tends to favor a Democrat, okay? Well, he's a Democrat and he bent the rules. You know how those things work. And vice versa if it was a Republican in office. So how do you deal with situations like that? How does it make you feel when somebody basically accuses you of making a decision on a partisan basis rather than, like you said, nonpartisan?
Being attacked as partisan for somebody that values being nonpartisan in the office as highly as I do, I'm not going to lie. It bothers me. And I try to point to my record, and the fact that I campaigned on upholding the principles of integrity and accountability. And I think I do have a very strong record of upholding the laws irrespective of whether or not a Democrat or a Republican violated it. Went after Acorn, for example, the only jurisdiction that criminally charged them, and in fact they pled guilty. That was a group, obviously, that was affiliated with the Democratic side. And there are numerous other examples like that, that, you know, I wish people would remember when they try to call you partisan. Unfortunately, in today's, you know, political climate, with it being as highly charged as it is, you're not going to be able to get away from that. And so, you go into politics and knowing that you've got to have a thick skin, and, you just go forward every day, trying to uphold the rules as fairly as you can.
Yeah, because I've had friends of mine say that they think that your office should be considered nonpartisan. But I always come back with them and say, well, it's like a judge pointed it out pretty good last week. They say politics shouldn't be involved in stuff. Well, if you have more than two people in a room, you in a sense have politics involved at some level. So I personally, I believe that it should be a partisan office, just for the simple fact of, look at it this way, then I like when someone's being interviewed and have a D or an R next to their name. Now, not necessarily saying that, you know, if they have a D, I'm going to think that's a bad individual, or an R is a good individual, but you tend to know that one side maybe will be a little more liberal leaning in certain areas and some a little more conservative. So it gives the public more of an understanding of where exactly that individual comes from. So I agree with it being partisan. I just find it would be challenging for me if I was constantly, well, he did that because he's a Republican.
Was that a statement or a question?
Yeah, it was a statement.
Secretary of State, what bills or what have, since you've been in office, what has your office or your administration done for veterans and their families so far?
You know, that was one of my biggest priorities when I took office, was to make it easier for the military men and women serving overseas to be able to cast ballots. Nevada wasn't unlike any other jurisdiction in the country, where the military, the very people that are out there fighting to protect this right, weren't able to take advantage of that right easily enough. And so we went into the 2007 session and passed legislation that was really at the forefront of the country that allowed military men and women to fax their ballots in, and we try to get those ballots out early. While that proved somewhat effective, obviously there are not a lot of fax machines out in the remote bases in Iraq and Afghanistan, and so we went back to military leaders across the state and asked them what we could do to improve it even further. And in 2009, we championed legislation that allowed those military men and women overseas to email their ballots back. That ended up leading the country. We put that legislation in place before what's termed the MOVE Act, which mandated that all states put that system in place and that you mail the ballots out 45 days prior to the election. And then in 2011, we passed a bill called UMOVA, which is a model piece of legislation only 6 states have, that extends the same right to the families of military men and women overseas. And so we've really been at the forefront, I think, of the movement of making it easier for the military to vote. That's part of the reason why I was invited out to the Pew Center summit just last week, one Democrat, one Republican, to talk about best practices and try to encourage other states to follow our lead.
I see. And your administration has made it easier for veterans to actually vote in regular elections. Does that include the municipal elections as well?
It includes all elections in the state, and so that's pretty significant. When a survey was done by the Pew Center, Nevada was a top 5 state in terms of ballots returned from military men and women overseas, and 99% of those ballots were counted. So that's pretty tough to improve upon. We're going to obviously work at it, make sure that they're able to vote in the 2012 race, playing such a pivotal role in Nevada as a battleground state. But I'm proud to say that we're doing really well.
So, how do you find these active duty military personnel and their families? Let's say somebody was is a resident of Nevada and they're in the Air Force stationed at Nellis, but they're doing an operation somewhere in South Carolina, and they moved their whole family over there for 6 months. How do you communicate with with the bases to find out where these families are to actually mail or give them their ballots so they could go ahead and vote? How does that work?
We communicate regularly. There are national organizations that help us do that also, the Overseas Vote Foundation, and a lot of groups that are out there, the Blue Star Moms, and we communicate with military leaders within the state to try to identify those voters and outreach to them. The number one challenge, I think, is not finding individuals, but ultimately making it easy enough that, when they've got just a few seconds to jump onto a computer and want to check Facebook or use email or video chat with the family back home, that convincing them to take that precious time and actually send in their ballots. If it's too cumbersome, they won't do it. We know that. And so we try to make it much easier for them to be able to get their ballots back.
A lot of these candidates, sometimes when they file their campaign expense report, sometimes they say they file it, but the Secretary of State office never received it, and then all of a sudden they get this fine. How do you determine who should be fined and who shouldn't?
Well, it's easy now. We may have had that problem in prior elections, but beginning January 1st of this year, just last month, all candidates are required to submit their reports electronically, and so that obviously creates a digital record. They get an email confirmation that their report's been submitted, and we can verify whether or not it has. So it's not a question of something getting lost in the mail or the fax not going through and having a difference of opinion as to whether or not it was actually received.
And this is one of the things that I kind of kid with Larry Lomax about. And if anybody that doesn't know who Larry Lomax is, he's the Clark County Electoral Registry. Is that a proper name to call him?
He's the Clark County Register of Voters. Yeah. Okay.
I always kid and say, well, during early voting, Larry already know who's winning what race. Is that true? Do you know who's winning what race during early voting before? Because I know early voting is like for 2 weeks, and then it stops a whole weekend, and then 3 days actually, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Then it goes to Tuesday for the election day. So I'm thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, with the computers and between Larry and yourself, you guys already know who's winning what race. Is that a fair statement, Secretary of State?
No. We don't know. What happens is during early vote, they take all of those voting cartridges, since Nevada uses 100% electronic machines, and they'll take those cartridges and put them in the vault in Clark County, and they'll maintain a strict chain of custody on that cartridge. Per law, they're not allowed to start voting until after all the polls close. And so once he gets notification that all the polls have closed, he'll take those cartridges out, bring them into the count room, which is a process that, the public and the media can observe. And the count room is an open room with glass windows and the like, so that the public can't interfere with it, but you can see what's going on, and they will start to tabulate the results. That's why in Nevada, usually you'll start getting results shortly after 7 o'clock. Usually around 7:30. The first results that you'll get are those cartridges that were put in the vault from early voting. It'll take a little bit longer for the other results to come in because they've got to be transported from the individual polling locations down to the central headquarters of Larry's shop, and ultimately put in the same tabulation room and counted.
Well, I always wonder this because I see it goes let's say, for example, under the candidate's name, it goes 25 voting polls results are in out of 100, and then 75 voting polls are in out of 100. I've seen numbers when it was 75 voting polls out of 100. Let's say a person got 9,700 votes, and then from 75 polling locations calculated to 100. The numbers never changed. So with this person out of 25 precincts never got one vote.
This is an area that can be easily confused, and I'm glad you bring it up. So what happens is, when they start tabulating those results, there'll be a massive number of votes that are counted at that point, and it'll tell you how many votes have been counted, but it'll still show 0% of the precincts reporting. And that is because for the early voting sites, you don't know what precinct these people necessarily came from when you're first tabulating the results. In order to get the precinct information, you have to have the results from that individual precinct on voting day to say that this is the percent of precincts that have actually reported.
Okay. Secretary, we've heard a lot in the news last couple weeks about Florida trying to change some of their voting laws by shortening early voting and also being much stricter upon showing, picture ID at the polling place before they're allowed to vote. And get some challenges that's voter suppression, because maybe college kids won't have a proper ID or whatever the case may be. In Nevada, is that something that is controlled by your office, or is that done on a county basis of what exactly is required for that person to be able to vote at the polling place?
That is set ultimately by the statutes, and so that is ultimately determined by the legislature as to what process is in place. Just recently, I put in place regulations which had to be approved by the legislature that mandated that the forms of identification that are required the first time anybody registers to vote that have been in place since 2002, I restricted those to limit even further the number of the forms of identification that somebody can use to prove their identity.
Do you, it always amazes me, and I understand a little bit where some Floridians may be coming from on the fact that you're talking about the Old South, and we all have heard about the Jim Crow days of these ridiculous tests that they would make people take to be able to vote, and there was no way they could ever get the answers. So voter suppression is a very sensitive issue in the South, in particular. But just on a personal. How do you feel personally about shouldn't there be laws in place to make sure that person is who they say they are, and that so we're not allowing people that aren't registered to vote or shouldn't be able to vote to the right to vote, or even, God forbid, be able to vote more than once?
Look, I think, the common ground on this issue is that everybody agrees we want to make it as easy as possible for everybody to vote, but harder to cheat. And we've got to make sure that only those people that are eligible to vote are, in fact, casting the ballots. And so when you talk about an issue that's as divisive as voter ID, it hits upon that core issue. You're going to hear people arguing that that's an important safeguard that protects against fraud. On the other side, you're going to hear the argument that there are many people out there that don't have ID, that have lost ID, and you're disenfranchising people from the polls. I think photo ID, if it's done well, is a reasonable safeguard that could be put in place. Contrary to the model that's been put out in the country to this point about requiring photo ID at the polls, which the jury's still out on, I think the better solution would be to have the election officials actually maintain the photos in the poll book. So we would take the photos from the DMV, if people have a license or an ID card, actually put it in the poll in the poll book. That way, the election officials could verify that individual is the person that they said they are. And then, if somebody shows up, they've lost their wallet, they don't have their ID, or they're an older voter who's never had a driver's license, which there are a lot of across the country. Then you'd simply take their picture, and we would include that as part of the poll book also, and then you'd be able to verify it. To me, that would add an important safeguard, wouldn't cost as much money as giving out free IDs, and ultimately, I think is a good common ground between the parties on both sides.
Well, what safeguards have you in place as far as mail-in ballots? Because anybody could fill out a form. I mean, let's say I move from my location, and somebody else is renting the house or bought the house and have access to the mailbox now, and they get my ballot, my sample ballot, or my ballot in there, and they fill it out and put whoever they want and mail it in. What is the safeguards in mail-in ballots?
The biggest safeguard we have in Nevada is, number one, we verify the signature that's on file to match it with the signature that's submitted.
Are they signature experts? How do they actually know if that's my signature?
Well, the election officials look at it, and they've had some training, and most of them are pretty experienced, and it actually does turn out to be a pretty good indicator from all the nonpartisan groups that have studied it. A lot of states don't have that. They don't even have the basic signature verification, so that is one line of defense. The second line of defense is that, if somebody does do that, and it is detected, and we do have certain ways of detecting it. We have caught people doing it before. We enforce it.
How do you enforce it?
How
do you enforce the Secretary of State?
Bring up criminal charges on them.
Okay, and you have done that in the past.
Yeah, there was a high-profile case that the DA's office prosecuted where there was a bar owner that people remember that was encouraging people to request absent ballots and getting a hold of all the absent ballots and just sending them in, pre-marking them for a certain candidate.
Okay. You have anything else for the Secretary of State?
One last question.
Okay, you don't have anything else.
Yeah. No, just one last question. So I know Clark County does an extremely good job at, as far as there hasn't been many cases as far as voter fraud and stuff with the electronic balloting and actually, printing out the actual ballot so you can verify it again. What are you knowledgeable of how some of the rural counties and some of the northern counties are doing on that area?
We're the only state in the country that uses a voter-verified paper trail on all of the machines, and every polling place in the entire state uses those same machines with the paper printout. And since 2002, we have conducted a post-election audit after every election, comparing the paper record to the electronic tally to make sure that they match up, and we haven't found any discrepancies whatsoever. So I think, in my opinion, obviously with a little bit of bias, but I think Nevada's got the gold standard for how to run elections. We haven't seen the types of irregularities you see in other jurisdictions.
I got a hypothetical question for you, Secretary of State. Let's pretend that you're a Republican and voted in this caucus. Who would you vote for?
Even Governor Sandoval didn't disclose that. So
he was with Rick Perry for a while until he dropped out. Come on now.
That's just
you don't want to answer?
No.
Come on, you'd be able to pick your opponent.
Right.
Well, Jim, you have anything else?
No.
Well, Did you fly out here just for us? I just need to know.
I did come down here. It works a lot better when you're in the studio than.
We appreciate that, Ross Miller. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you want to give out your contact information, so if anybody have any questions for the Secretary of State.
Sure. Moving forward, if anybody has any questions about the election, the website is nvsos.gov. You can log on there and look up your polling location, whether or not you're registered to vote. In Clark County, if you're not registered, you can register to vote if you have a DMV issued ID. So it's actually more secure than the paper-based system. And then our phone number is 775-684-5709.
And I wanted to say that I appreciate that you took the time out to meet with me and one of my members. Was at the beginning of last month. So I wanted to thank you for that as well.
You asked me to fly down here for it, and so I did it.
That's true, and I appreciate that. Thank you. This is Steve Sampson, Jim Jonas with Veterans in Politics. Don't go away, folks. We're going to have Mark Hutchison, who's on the Mitt Romney campaign, and we're supposed to have George Harris as well, but George Harris is on the Newt Gingrich campaign, and I don't see him in studio, so Mark is going to take it away for us. This is Steve Sampson, Jim Jones with Veterans in Politics. We'll be right back.
Veterans in Politics takes a proactive approach to provide you, the veteran, with the political voice for which you fought and served.
Veterans in Politics is becoming the premier veteran organization of the 21st century, with political candidate interviews, insight, and endorsements.
Public speaking engagements in support of American values.
Radio shows to keep you updated on the latest in veteran and military support operations.
Providing job placement and business support.
Go to veteransinpolitics.com today and do your part in defending liberty.
9711 Southeastern Avenue, Suite H1 is the place to be. Get yourself a treat. Come to M&Y Snowballs to beat the heat. More than 40 regular flavors, 8 sugar-free flavors, or your choice of 2 cream flavors. Stuff your snowball with soft-serve ice cream for $1 more. We have smoothies, soft drinks, cheese and nachos, and even more. New Orleans original flavor, all of which you can savor. We hope to see you there.
Hey, listen up. If you're a military veteran, if you're related to a veteran, or if you know a veteran, you'll enjoy the Veterans Reporter radio show every Thursday from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. with me. I'm your host, Chuck N. Baker. Every week, we will explore veterans' issues and we'll have guests who will talk about topics of interest to and about the veterans community. And if you don't listen, you'll have to give me 20 push-ups.
Americans have been fooled by politicians about illegal immigration. They make you think that if you bring up this topic, you are a racist. Did you know that America is the only country on this planet that does not enforce its federal immigration laws? For the fear of being called a racist, I am for legal immigration. I was born on the island of Jamaica, became an American citizen, served 12 years in the U.S. military, served in Desert Storm, and received a Presidential Unit Citation, National Defense Medal, and Marine Corps Commendation. Our immigration laws serve a purpose. I understand that this country was founded on immigration, but there is a wrong way and a right way. I'm here to tell you that illegal immigration is breaking our federal laws. Why don't you call me a racist? This is Steve Sanson.
All right, great. Then it's a date. As Miss Nevada, my schedule can be really busy at times, but there is one activity I had to put on my calendar, and that's the Veterans Valentine Ball and Gala. February 11th is your chance to help local veterans meet with the state's dignitaries and feel the love for Valentine's Day. So, bring your sweetheart down to the Plaza Hotel on February 11th at 5:30 p.m. for a dinner, dance, and silent auction. Visit veteransinpolitics.com to purchase your tickets. I've got my date. Do you?
This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas with Veterans in Politics, folks. And Mark Hutchison is not on any of the email blasts, so we're going to call him a special guest.
Yeah.
Mark Hutchison is an attorney in town, and he's also running for state senate, and he's on the Mitt Romney campaign. Take it away, Mark. Give us a bio about yourself.
Well, thanks so much, Steve and Jim. It's great to be here with you. I'm a longtime Las Vegas attorney. I'm also a native of Las Vegas, graduated from the great Bonanza High School, and actually graduated from UNLV as well, and came back after a couple years after graduating from law school, and started a law practice here. And we have Hutchison and Stephan here locally, and we do litigation and commercial transactions and tax law and all kinds of stuff, and just love Las Vegas, and the state of Nevada has been so good to us and our family. I've got 6 children and a beautiful wife who I've had for 25 years, and life is good, Steve.
You know, but before we even talk about you being on the Mitt Romney bandwagon, I want to talk a little bit about you.
Sure.
Your law firm has spearheaded the Obamacare bill,
right?
Anti-Obamacare bill,
right? Right.
And you're running for a state senator. Mark, why?
I thought you were going to say, Steve, when do you have time to do anything? My wife asks me all the time. I know I've been away too long, Steve and Jim. When I go home at night, my children say, Uncle Mark, it's great to see
Uncle Mark.
So, you know what? The reason that I decided to run, and I thought about it, and initially said, no, maybe this doesn't work. But ultimately, I know that you both feel the same way I do, which is 2012 is a watershed year. It's a tipping point year. I think most of us agree that there's a real need now for us to maybe head in a little different direction. And if we don't, then we may not be able to head in a different direction. And so I ultimately dug down deep and said, what am I doing about this? And ultimately decided that I would run for office. And
isn't that going to cut into your finances?
Oh, it will. Sure. Yeah, sure it will. Yeah. And you know what, though? I really believe that most of us, and you both do this with this radio show and other things, so many other things that you all do with Veterans in Politics, that we all have an obligation. It's in our founding DNA, to be contributors and to be part of the solution, not necessarily part of the problem. And so we need to run for office, or we need to support those who do, or we need to be involved in the political system. And I feel like that's just something that every citizen should do.
Your supporters, I don't know who made that call to you and say, hey, Mark, why don't you run for state senate? But don't they know that there's two types of people? There are leaders and followers, and don't they know that you're just not a follower? I think you're going to go up there and say you want to be majority whip or minority whip or just speaker or whatever it is that they got up there.
Right. No, I think that they know. I told them I'm not a perfect candidate. I have a full-time legal practice and have a big family and have a passion for my faith and my church involvement. So I've got a lot of things going on. But at the end of the day, this is a watershed year, and I decided to make a run there. And I think they're going to take me with all my baggage, Steve.
Okay. But before we get into why you're on the Mitt Romney campaign and why Mitt Romney should be the president of the United States, I just want to just put this out there that the Veterans in Politics has not endorsed any presidential candidate at this point, and each member goes and vote as they seem fit. So I just want to put that out there.
Good.
Now, although we're still involved and we still make the circles and we still try to meet all the presidential candidates, I think we have met Newt. We have met Ron Paul yesterday, and we're planning on going to see Mitt Romney tonight.
Good.
At the Red Rock, if anybody wants to go out there and see him as well. And Santorum, we haven't met at this point, but I know Dr. Paul and Mitt Romney, we've met in 2008 in Reno when they was first running in that presidential era. But let's talk about why you believe that Mitt Romney should be the president of the United States.
Well, Steve, I think it gets back to my prior point, which is 2012 is a tipping point year, a watershed year in our country's history. We have been going down, in my opinion, a failed path. And the policies that the current administration have pursued have been utter failures. They have zapped from the American people the American dream, the American energy that we have, the greatness of our country, and Mitt Romney will restore that. Mitt Romney is a believer in capitalism. It's been a big part of the campaign. Maybe you'll talk more about that. But Mitt Romney shouldn't, and neither should any of us, apologize for being successful or for taking capitalism too far, as some of the even Republican candidates have suggested. I think every one of us want to succeed and do well, and this country is one of the places where you can actually do that and come here with nothing and leave with a lot. And there's nothing wrong with that. And Mitt Romney has been highly successful. He did not inherit this money from his father. He went out and earned it the old-fashioned way.
And that was a rumor that was going around as well.
It was going around. His father, George Romney, left him no big inheritance. He went to school. He's a smart guy, graduated from business and law school, and then went to work, as we all know, first for Bain Capital and then Bain Investments, and became wildly successful because of his just intelligence and hard work and discipline and talent, and made good money. Came back and was asked to come fix the Olympics. You remember that mess that the Olympics was in? Right next door, absolutely scandal-ridden, allegations of bribery, and it was way, way, way over budget. He came in and solved that problem and actually wound up with a surplus of $100 million. Anyway, so he's a turnaround specialist, and that's what I think we need in this country now, a turnaround specialist, somebody who knows what he's doing, knows how to create great companies, knows how to create great jobs. He's the only candidate, Steve, who's ever created a private sector job among the Republican field. Sports Authority, Staples, we've all heard that, and dozens of other companies. And so that's going to be what he brings to the table. He'll bring a businessman's approach, a conservative value approach to the White House.
Some people say that John McCain made a mistake by picking Sarah Palin instead of Mitt Romney to be his vice president when John McCain was the nominee, Republican nominee for president. With that said, I don't know why John did that, and I've met him several times as well. I always thought Mitt Romney would have been a much better, my personal opinion, I always thought Mitt Romney would have been a much better VP than Sarah Palin. And with that said, there's been a lot of argument back and forth between the Santorum's camp and other camps, talking about when Governor Romney was governor of Massachusetts, correct? Sure. His health care plan, they thought it was just like the Obama health care plan. Right. You want to explain a little bit about that? Sure, and that's something that I, as you know, Steve, and you mentioned, feels passionate about, because I am the lawyer for the state of Nevada, prosecuting the case on behalf of Nevada against the federal government, trying to challenge, and in fact challenging, the constitutionality of that healthcare legislation. So one of the very first things I was asked by a reporter was, he found out that I had been appointed by the governor to lead this charge, and he went back and looked at my political contributions and saw that I donated to Mitt Romney. He said, well, this seems rather hypocritical, Mr. Hutchison, you know, right? And I said, well, let me just remind you about the basic structure of our government. The federal government is limited in power. You have to look at the Constitution and decide and evaluate it and say, can the federal government act under a specific provision that authorizes them to act in the Constitution? States are completely different. All the states have got to do is get enough people in the legislature and the governor to pass a bill and to sign the bill, as long as it's not unconstitutional. It's not like violating people's rights. And so the fundamental difference is the states can experiment on a lot of different things. And the fact is, Massachusetts experimented with the health care legislation that they came up with, and they're free to do that, and it's proper to do that. And listen, heaven bless them, because people in Massachusetts decided to do that. That's far different than whether the federal government can do it. The federal government's got to be able to point to a provision in the Constitution and say, here is where we can require all Americans to purchase a product, to purchase health insurance. And in our opinion, the 26 states that are challenging this, they can't find a place in the Constitution. They point to the Commerce Clause, and that's what this case will be all about. So Governor Romney, as governor, and of course, remember, he's got 85% Democrats in his legislature, right? 85%. And they come up with this plan, and they tinker with it, and they mess with it, and they decide that they're going to try it. So they tried it. Would I do that? Or do I think it's a good idea for the state of Nevada? No. But it's a state issue. But the mindset by Nevadans is just a little bit more conservative than the state of Massachusetts. Absolutely. That's what I bring up to people. No question. So, I mean, but to get back just a little bit into the Commerce Clause, are they trying to say when they point to the Commerce Clause, is the government trying to make a case that it's, well, they couldn't say it's interstate commerce, could they? They are. Yes, that's exactly what they're saying, Jim. They're saying this is interstate commerce, and therefore Congress can regulate this. The response to that is this is anything but interstate commerce. Yeah. These are people who don't want to buy anything, and you, the federal government, are requiring them to enter into a private transaction with an insurance company, and then you're going to regulate it. It's the first time that the Commerce Clause has ever been used that way, Jim. It's always been, as you said before, interstate commerce has already been taking place. It's already going on, and now Congress regulates it. This is the first time where Congress has said we're going to use the Commerce Clause to require Americans to enter into a contract or enter into a business transaction that they may not want to do. Well, let's just hope Justice Kennedy, because this is ultimately going to go to the Supreme Court. Let's just hope Justice Kennedy's a conservative on this one, so we win that 5-4. I agree. Listen. I tell people all the time, Jim, pray that Justice Kennedy doesn't die. You know, so Mark, what's Governor Romney's plan on returning veterans that are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, returning veterans that are suffering from a high foreclosed market, a high unemployed market, especially if they're a sniper in the Marine Corps, so to speak. You know, they can't come back and there's no jobs that's a sniper for hire or anything like that. How are they going to retrain them back into the workforce? And the disability claims that they put in is very slow with the Veterans Administration. So I want to know what Governor Romney's plan is to help these veterans transition back into civilian society.
Well, Governor Romney has always said that the veterans deserve our utmost respect and help. And if there are those who are coming back who need to have psychological treatment, physical treatment, that's a priority for him, and he would not be in favor of cutting funding for that or eliminating programs. In fact, he wants to enhance everywhere we can those who have fought and died for this country and their families, and to enhance their opportunities from a psychological, physical standpoint. Do everything you can to support them. Now, from an economic standpoint, what do you do in terms of helping them? And that's what absolutely breaks my heart, and I know it breaks the governor's heart as well, is when you have these veterans who have given everything come back now to a job market that is just at rock bottom. And I know that the governor is in favor of providing opportunities for veterans, giving incentives to employers to hire veterans, and then beyond that, just a general boost to the economy so that we can get jobs growth again. And I mean, that's going to be the greatest thing that we can do for veterans or for anybody else, is to first off have a general growth in the job market. We all agree with that and know that. But beyond that, he is in favor of providing opportunities to veterans and providing incentives for employers to hire veterans.
Mark, one of the things that I think is the biggest farce that a lot of people, unless they really understand politics at a level kind of like us three do. It's unfortunate that people don't take the time, first of all, to understand the issues the way they should. But that being said, what's Governor Romney's plan for? We hear all the time about how the unemployment rate is starting to get a little bit better. But how about those individuals that have been out of work 3-4 years and are now actually, they've stopped looking for work? Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I think that jobless rate is starting to come down a little bit, just because they've stopped looking.
That's right.
So what kind of plan would Governor Romney have to get these people, maybe they need some retraining or something to get them back into being able to say, hey, come on, let's get back into the game and start looking for work.
Right. Well, one of the things that the governor has mentioned repeatedly is there's got to be more to receiving unemployment than just simply collecting a check. Right. So people have got to be able to, and this was very successfully implemented, as you may recall, in the 90s when there was a lot of this kind of reform going on. You've got to be able to come in and let's have some accountability here in terms of looking for a job, finding a job, and or training for a new job. And so Governor Romney is in favor of job training and rehabilitation of job skills, and making that a condition to receipt of unemployment, and providing those opportunities for people who can't necessarily afford it. The other thing he's in favor of, Jim, that I'll tell you is that not everybody needs to be bound for college. Right. I mean, we have got to get back to, and he said this repeatedly, I mean, he comes from the industrial base of America, he comes from the manufacturing base of America, and there are jobs going without any employees, even though there's a great demand for it, because there aren't great machinists or welders or people who are pipe fitters, and we've sort of lost that industrial core job skill. And so he's in favor of community colleges, for example, focusing on that and providing opportunities, then not to necessarily just automatically go to college. It's either, don't go to college or go to college. How about some other opportunities at the community college level where we can start having some of these more industrial, labor-intensive skills developed?
Yeah, like, trade skills, or getting back into more, encouraging employers to have more apprenticeship programs as well that they used to before. Well, now, what would you say to someone who may be a Newt Gingrich supporter that would say, you know what, I agree with Governor Romney's stance on that, but my guy is the one that helped push through that legislation, help push through that reform? Yeah, and I would applaud, and I do applaud Newt Gingrich for doing that. He was a big part of that welfare reform, and Bill Clinton was in office at the time, and he was able to make that happen. There's a lot of good things about what Newt Gingrich did in the 90s, and that was one of them. Probably the best among many that led to some specific reformations for the first time in government. That welfare reform, and a lot of what we talked about was in place. But now, you know what happened, Jim? And what a lot of people don't realize is, under the Obamacare legislation, under the healthcare legislation, almost all of that reform to the welfare system, and you've got to have some accountability when you're getting unemployment and getting assistance from the government, was absolutely eliminated. I just read, 1 in 7 Americans now are on food stamps. 1 in 7.
And we've become a land of entitlement instead of a land of opportunity.
And most of our military is on food stamps as well.
Yeah, and that's a sad sign, because I know that those in the military and most Americans, they don't want to be on food stamps. They don't want to have that assistance. They want to go get a job and have a job and be able to support their families in a rising economy. That's why it's just so important to get this thing turned around. It is such a human tragedy to have 9, 10, 11% unemployment like we've had in Nevada for how long now?
Right.
And foreclosure rates going through the roof and bankruptcies going through the roof. That's why it's just a human tragedy. And I know that the veterans feel that even heavier than a lot of people.
So, Mark, I got a pure like a political strategist question for you. So after we get through Maine, I believe Maine will be the last one. Then we're going to have 3 weeks where there's no caucuses, there's no primaries coming up. And now that your guy seems to have the momentum, what's the plan for those 3 weeks to get ready to? So for just get after Super Tuesday, just get this thing over and done with. Just get everybody to drop out but your guy.
Well, I think you're going to see Governor Romney do well in February, as you said, Jim. I think that I think it's either 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 6 of the next several states he won in 2008 and looks very well poised to win there. But Super Tuesday is going to be huge for him. And so the plan is going to be to spend enough time in the states that he needs to spend in February, but also to be looking forward to Super Tuesday. He's spending a ton of time down south, and he's got a lot of great support down there. That's the one thing that the Mitt Romney campaign has that's superior to most other campaigns. Ron Paul campaign is very well organized as well, as we all know. And they've got armies of people there for Ron Paul. But Newt Gingrich not so much, and Rick Santorum not so much. But the governor's been in the South a lot already. He's got great infrastructure there. He's got great people, boots on the ground there, and so they're already working that entire southern strategy there to see if we can't shut it down and seal up this nomination by the time we hit Super Tuesday.
Well, Mark, I want to thank you for coming on.
You bet.
Especially with such last minute.
I'm happy to do it, Steve.
And you're going to be at the Veterans Valentine's Gala next week?
I'm planning on being there. I told you I'm going to support you.
Okay. And we need you to come back and talk about your candidacy for state senate as well.
Good. I will be happy to do so and tell you the issues I think are important for Nevada.
Do you have a point of contact you want to let the listeners know how to get a hold of you?
Sure. We've got a website, www.hutch4, the number 4, Nevada.com.
Okay.
Hutch4Nevada.com. That's
Mark Hutchison. He is an attorney in town with Hutchison and Steffens, and he's also running a candidate for Nevada State Senate, and he's on the Mitt Romney campaign. This is Steve Sampson, Jim Jonas. Folks, don't go away. We have a special 2-hour program today. We're going to bring on Judge Deborah Lippis, who is the Las Vegas Justice Court Judge.
While growing up, I've always asked my family, who is my father? I was told the name of a man. When I became older, I looked for this man and found him. He thought that I was his son as well, but after a DNA test, it was discovered that my family was lying to me all my life. I pressured my family to give me the real identity of my father. I then became suspicious and took my grandfather's DNA. After I buried my grandfather, 2 days later, I discovered that my grandfather was, in fact, my biological father. I questioned myself and asked, what is my purpose on this earth? I should have never been conceived. But when I look at my 4 children, I knew that everything happens for a reason. This is Steve Sampson. Find your identity.
The sound of On Wheels Now, every Tuesday at 6 p.m.
If you like cars,
the smell of gasoline and rubber,
or just love motorsports and auto racing,
On Wheels Now is your inside look at local motorsports.
So don't miss the action.
We'll keep you in the loop with the latest local racing news.
We're race car drivers too, so join me, Michael,
and Mike, Tuesday at 6 p.m. Find us at onwheelsnow.com.
Are you a business owner struggling during these economic times? Please listen up. How would you like to put your business and services in front of every resident and business in the Las Vegas Valley for less than a penny per home? Yes, that's right. I said less than 1 cent per home and business. And how would you like to have a dynamic and exciting online presence with the major search engines? How about an online video for your business and a fully optimized website with absolutely no setup fee? Hi, my name is George. If you are interested in these and other services that can make your phone ring with clients and prospects, then call me at 702-296-8394. Just call George at 702-296-8394. Thank you.
This public service announcement is brought to you by Veterans in Politics International. The Veterans in Politics mission is to teach, educate, organize, and awaken our veterans and their families to select, support, and vote intelligently for a better world, and to protect ourselves from our own governments and a culture of corruption, and to be the political voice for those in other groups that do not have one.
There are too many homeless veterans, and more help is needed from the VA. Every veteran service organization post should adopt a local homeless veteran.
The funding of VA medical centers is inadequate, and building a VA hospital in Southern Nevada is moving at a slow pace. The budget has been flatlined for too many years. The VA is too quick to deny claims and too slow to help veterans gather records in support of claims.
Local politicians ignore veterans and their issues. They perceive a lack of organization among their local veterans and that it won't hurt them at election time. Veterans too often vote party, not veteran issues. All veterans should vote in every election.
The news media give inadequate coverage to veteran issues and events. You must send letters to the editor and voice this concern.
Please contact your members of Congress and Senate and urge them to co-sponsor key legislation in supporting our veterans.
Please support Veterans in Politics. And to get more information, go to www.veteransinpolitics.com.
Hey you, this is Vince here on the Talk with Vince show, where no subject is off the table. We'll explore the depths of your mind. Spirituality, we talk it. Enlightenment, we talk it. Politics, we talk that too. Ufology, you want it, you got it. Conspiracy facts, we're on it. Sex, we talk it. So join me every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. for Talk with Vince here on VegasAllNetRadio.com. Talk that will blow your mind.
All right, great. Then it's a date. As Miss Nevada, my schedule can be really busy at times, but there is one activity I had to put on my calendar, and that's the Veterans Valentine Ball and Gala. February 11th is your chance to help local veterans meet with the state's dignitaries and feel the love for Valentine's Day. So, bring your sweetheart down to the Plaza Hotel on February 11th at 5:30 p.m. for a dinner, dance, and silent auction. Visit veteransinpolitics.com to purchase your tickets. I've got my date. Do you?
Well, we are back. We're just moving right along like an assembly line, Jim.
Yep.
We got Judge Deborah Lippis, who's the Las Vegas Justice Court judge. Judge Lippis, what department is that?
Department 1.
The number 1?
Number 1.
Wow.
On the hit parade.
Judge, could you give us a bio about yourself?
Absolutely. I was a practicing attorney for 10 years in both criminal defense and prosecution. Before I started my law career, I had a federal and state law clerk internships. Started with the PD's office for almost 5 years, and then went to the DA's office for 5 years. Tried probably in excess of 45, 50 cases, from death penalty cases on down to the most minor of felonies and minors of misdemeanors. Decided to try to become a judge after about 10 years of practice, and was real fortunate. In 1992, I was in a contested race with 10 people and was lucky enough to sail right through.
Well, you've been on the bench since 92.
I have.
And I've known you since 98.
Yes, you have.
That's a long time. Judge, could you explain to the listeners exactly what a justice of the peace do? What's their function?
We're really called a lot of times the People's Court. Generally, the first judges most people will see is my level of jurisdiction. We handle small claims. We handle civil cases that are not the district court level. Lots of preliminary hearings where we determine whether there's enough evidence to send the case to district court for trial. Protective orders. I even have some juveniles that come in on protective order issues, sometimes some traffic stuff. We just have a huge mix of cases that we hear. One of the great things you might want to tell your listeners that we have now is a self-help center for the civil division.
When did that start?
That's been a couple of years now, and it is just incredible. Barbara Buckley was certainly involved in that and got it going along with our court and the district court as well, particularly the evictions that people are involved with, and more so now because the economy is in such a mess. They can really use the services that are down in the self-help center. They can use it for evictions, for small claims cases, and even for the civil cases if they happen to have somebody who has a lawyer suing them. Lots of resources down there to help them maneuver our court.
The eviction process, how does that work on your psyche when you have to make determination that somebody needs to evacuate from the premises?
I actually remember my first eviction case from all those years ago. I was devastated. This poor lady, and she had 3 children, and she was a single mom. She hadn't paid her rent actually in 3 or 4 months, and they kept giving her chance after chance. And you know, we can, as judges, hopefully we have compassion and we can try to help people work things out and squeeze a little more time out of the landlord. But she'd had all those months, and the law was as clear as it could possibly be. But what I learned from that experience was to go into the community and grab lists of all the resources that were there, and I still have this to this day. So when somebody comes in to me now, the evictions I don't hear anymore because we now have civil departments that hear them, but people will come to me now committing crimes that they've never committed before, like stealing diapers,
right,
baby aspirin. These are not criminals.
What these people that shoplift the baby products, because I remember that one movie when the guy walked into that grocery store and stuck it up and it goes, "I want all your cash and a box of Huggies."
A box of Huggies.
How do you, especially as a woman, how do you handle that when somebody is in your court for shoplifting baby products, diapers, and aspirin, such as that you just brought up? How does that work with you? How do you handle that?
I'll first look and make sure they don't have a record, and even if they do, considering what they've alleged to have stolen, I'll say, look, I'm going to give you the number for social services. Here it is. A couple other numbers to go with it. There are resources out there that will give you these things and make sure your children are well taken care of. And then I'll ask the DA, do you mind if we just put her on a deferred prosecution? Or him, if it's a guy. And, let him go get these resources. Come back and show me that you really made contact. But I have to tell you, even with that, some of them don't have phones. They don't have transportation. It's just really difficult. So I give them the numbers, the address, the contacts, hoping that maybe they can get a friend to get them there. Because social services, our county social services really will help.
What if, I can understand doing that the first time, and that is just a part of being compassionate and understanding that these people have fallen on hard times. What about if you see them back in your court again, though?
Depends on what they did.
Because
always look at what they did.
Because the hardcore person in me is going to say they're still criminals no matter what they steal.
They're only a criminal if they get convicted.
Correct.
If they've just been charged, the presumption of innocence goes to them.
Right.
I think you have to look at the whole picture. If you come into me and you've taken a half dozen bottles of vodka and stuffed it down your pants,
right,
and they caught you outside and they got their booze back, but you were cited, that's a whole different.
Right.
But you also know two things. One, the guy has a drinking problem, or they're trading that for drugs.
Yeah.
So either way, we have a substance abuse problem. So that's how I deal with that one.
Okay.
And they're generally charged with the misdemeanor. It's rare that we get them, unless they have a huge prior record for burglary and grand larceny, depending on how expensive the vodka was they took.
Right.
you always have to look at the circumstances. Each case individual.
So, Judge, I got another question regarding. It's a little different. It's more along the political lines. In your last election, do you know roughly about what the turnout was? I mean, not just for you, but I mean just in general, roughly about how many people voted.
I don't. It was 1992. It was a special election that I was in because the judge who was on the bench had passed away. And there were 10 of us who got in, and I had from July to November to put that election together. So I really don't remember.
You haven't been opposed in
ever.
You've never been opposed.
Never.
And that's that's going to lead me up to several questions. You've been on the bench 20 years.
19. Just so I'm being accurate.
What month?
December. I took the bench December.
So it's coming up on your 20th year.
Coming up.
You gonna have a big party?
If I get reelected.
Am I going to be invited?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You and your sidekick over there.
You going on? Jim, you're going to get to come. You're going on 20 years of being on the bench. You've never been opposed. So you're not really. I'm just going to talk out of the box. You're probably not really in tune on the political campaign and stuff like that because you really have never had to do it. Why? And you could rebut. Why is it that you feel that your opponent is challenging you? One, why haven't you ran for a higher seat? Two, such as district court.
Write those down because that's two questions, and I want to answer both of those.
Okay. Why you feel your opponent is challenging you?
First of all, I don't want to speculate on why somebody would do something that they are. He's a nice young man. He's been in my court a couple of times. I've just heard, because we have mutual friends,
right,
that he wanted to get his name out there. Sometimes that happens.
And
I was the department that he picked. And that's okay, because he meets the minimum qualifications. Let him run.
You know, that's unfortunate, because I always ask a challenger, why is it that they feel they need to remove the incumbent? And some challengers really don't have an answer for me. They're just because it's my time. What does that mean? Because I always think that if you're going to remove somebody is because they're not doing a good job, they're incompetent, or especially a judge, they made a bad ruling, or they did something that was unethical, or whatever the case might be, or some people will probably say that maybe they're, because of their age, their performance on the job is not up to par, and they need somebody to be more suitable for taxpayers' dollars, so to speak.
I know that question has been asked of him by groups that we have both interviewed in front of him for endorsement.
Right.
And they've told me, your opponent has nothing bad to say about you. And I said, well, that's a good thing. And I don't have anything bad to say about him.
Right.
I'm running a race on my own credentials, what I've done. And it's befitting the judiciary. I mean, I don't get down and play in the dirt.
Right.
And I will not do it in this election, and there's really no reason to. I have a history. The public knows me. And I hope that I've served them well. I've tried.
I've spent many hours in your courtroom going back to
you should go to law school.
all the years when I used to do small claims, and in regards to our bylaws, a member of Veterans of Politics have to sit in a judge's courtroom that is up for election, and I did so in yours last week, and I've always, this is not an endorsement because the radio show is different from the interview, but I've always, in my perspective, saw you as a fair and impartial judge, that you always made the decisions that you believe is right, and you always follow the law. So I have nothing bad to say about you, Judge Lippis.
I'm glad.
And if I did, I actually would say it. Because
I know you would. I know you.
and
you want to know why I didn't move up?
That was my next question. Why haven't you moved up? Because Judge Abby Silver, she was Muni, then she was JP, and all of a sudden she's district. She went up the ladder so fast.
I had my plan A, and I got my plan A, and then I had my next plan A, and that was to move up. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to do at least 2 terms. in my spot, which meant 12 or 14 years, because I did an unexpired term and then ran again. And then I was ready to go. But life sometimes, I mean, I have my plans, just like everybody. And then the higher authorities say, I have another plan for you. And the plan was, both of my parents, elderly, got ill, and I did not want them to go into nursing homes.
I see.
And we're not wealthy, my husband and I, and I've learned a lot about planning for old age.
What does your husband do?
He's a survey design engineer with the railroad.
Okay.
So I have a railroad husband, and I do what I do. And my parents came from a generation that thought Social Security was going to take care of them. Mm-hmm. So I have to work. My husband travels, so he's gone 20 days a month. And the care is unbelievably expensive. And my choice was run for higher office, be gone more and more and put my parents in a nursing home, or stay where I am and continue with the things I can do and take care of them. And that was my choice. So I'll finish up here.
Have you thought about an appointment? Because you know, Judge, there's Judge Mosley, who's retiring, I believe, March, April, and you got Judge Hardcastle's also retiring in this year. I don't know exactly how the judicial canons work as far as you sitting as a judge and put an appointment in. I don't think you have to resign to do that.
You don't, not for a judicial one.
I know you have to if you were going to do another office like district attorney, because I know there was 2 judges that wanted to be the DA, but they couldn't do that because they would have to resign. Do you think that you would put an appointment in
to go up to district court?
Right.
Probably not. The reason why is I'm in the middle of an election. I don't have a primary, so there's only one person in my race. And if I were fortunate enough to get the appointment, the person who's running against me gets that job by default. And I don't think he's got the qualifications to do it.
Okay.
And there's lots of wonderful things going on in our court, great things going on. We've got some wonderful leadership with Judge Bennett. And so I'm excited about that.
How many times have you been Chief Judge?
Oh, heavens. Quite a few.
What's your belief in Veterans Court? How do you see it? Are you a sponsor of it? How do you see Veterans Court moving in your justice court system?
When the statute was passed,
right?
It was 2009.
Yes.
2009. It was not mandatory.
Yeah, I know.
And if you have been involved in the establishment of specialty courts, and I know you've been interested in them all along, the one I was most involved in was drug court. Sat for the district court judge when he wasn't available and participated in that. But I was on the committee for all the funding. And what I learned from that is you cannot develop a specialty court just because somebody says, okay, you have the authority, and then the next day you start it. Mm-hmm. I doubt that there were many of us, unless they have military backgrounds or family members in the military, which you need to ask me about because I have a bunch. This takes planning. It's not unlike a domestic violence specialty court. You need first to find the leaders in the vet court, which I'm sitting right here with him, and then pull in all the resources that are available to them. And then the judges need to learn what does it take to tap into those resources. Judge Tobiasen, Melanie, you know her well, volunteered for that. But it takes a while to get it off the ground.
It does.
And I actually went and talked to her before our interview because I do send some people to her court, but I still didn't know what the criteria was in terms of how do they tap into these benefits and what benefits are out there. So she gave me some guidance and some education. It's still voluntary. I got to tell you, the most important thing that I've seen with regard to vets in general, do you know how I'm finding out about most of them? I mean, we have lots of things in place to find out.
When they're before you?
No. I get letters, either from their commanding officer, and then we can talk about post-traumatic stress. They're in the military. They've received their orders, and the orders are to go to Afghanistan or Iraq, horrible, horrible places in the world. And just that, in my estimation, is traumatic. And the next thing you know, they're in trouble. And they have to ship out.
Do you know sometimes some of them get in trouble, the active ones, intentionally, if they had to go to Iraq because they really don't want to go? And they figure they use that as an out.
I suspect that may be true, but that's how I was finding most of them. So I get a letter from the commanding officer that they've been deployed, and can you please continue the case? Or I get a letter from the family. And they've gone and gotten a copy of the deployment orders, and they send them to me, and, I'll wait for them.
But I was surprised. I was surprised when Judge Tobiasen got Veterans Court over Judge Saragosa, who is a JAG in the Air Force, and she's been doing it for a while. In fact, she's a lieutenant colonel or a colonel.
She got promoted.
One of those two. Then she might be a full bird now. And I asked her about that, and I didn't really get an answer. But
I never asked, but I can tell you that Judge Saragosa had an interest in putting together the domestic violence court.
Okay.
And I just absolutely respect her for that, because that specialty court is difficult.
Okay.
But let me tell you some exciting news.
Tell me.
Unless you have more questions.
Jim, do you have any more questions?
I had just one. I had just one about when I asked it if you knew roughly what the turnout was.
I don't.
What I was trying to get at is because the way you answer the question, as far as with an individual that might steal diapers or just basic needs, why? Steve and I have always been big on this. Why do you think it is that so many people don't participate in judicial races, don't come out and vote, when you have these hearings? Or when you do rulings, you affect that person's life immediately. And if the wrong person is sitting on the bench, and maybe it's not you, maybe it wouldn't you, and that person wouldn't show a compassion or wouldn't allow or wouldn't give resources out to these individuals to get help, that would have a very dramatic negative impact on the community. So what kind of outreach or things are you trying to do to get people more involved in voting for judicial races?
I don't think it's just people not showing up for judicial races. I think if you look at the numbers, when they give them the numbers, especially after municipal court races, they're always so low. And they're mostly judicial races when it's a municipality, unless it's city council or something that's running. Here's what I've thought over many years. When I was a little girl and first went to court, my dad took me, actually. He was an honorary police officer on the Colorado Police Force in Denver, and he was going to go see his buddies, whatever they were doing. And that was the first time I'd ever seen the robe. And it was in the back of my head, obviously, for all the years of growing up and going through school. And I always thought that there was such respect, and that the judges protected you and followed the law. And as the years have passed, and I've been there, what I have seen is a decline in the respect for the judiciary. Anytime a judge gets in trouble, it affects all of us. It's just like a black eye. So the things that you do, you go to schools. I swear in student councils for schools. They have tons of questions. The same question all the time. Almost the first one is, do you like, and I use the word like in quotes, putting people in jail? And of course my answer is, well, some people are really dangerous and they have to go to jail, but mostly I wish people would get help and do good. But that's the level, 5th, 6th grade I'm talking to. Now when they have these student councils swearing in, the parents all there. And so I talk to the parents and the children at the same time. And I ask the children, do you know who gave me my job? Your parents, your aunts and uncles, your grandparents. So the more outreach we can do that way, the more good behavior, the more good things going on in the court, hopefully the more respect will be engendered for the judiciary. Beyond that, I don't know what else to do. Stay out of trouble, I do that.
Have you taken a tour of CCDC?
A number of times.
Okay.
A number of times. It's not my favorite place in the world.
I could imagine.
I spent a lot of time there, actually, when I was a public defender and representing my clients who were in custody.
Okay.
Have you ever heard a reference to, now I'm going to interview you.
Wow. That's a switch, Jim.
Community court? community courts?
I've heard of community courts.
Okay. Our chief and I talked about this last year, and it's actually...
We're still talking Judge Bennett or Judge Zimmerman?
Judge Bennett.
Okay.
Judge Bennett. She had heard about community courts. I had not. And she went and saw one in New York, and let's see what this is all about. And if you know Judge Bennett, she's very demonstrative when she talks, and especially when she's
nonsense.
No nonsense.
No.
And, but
I
when
know
she's
Judge Bennett.
when she's excited about something, though, and she was very excited about this, told me about it, I was excited, and I saw a vision of Judge Karen and Judge Debbie's community court. And actually, it was in the legislature this past time. But when it's about money and the economy is so depressed, I actually think, in my view, that a court like this will save the community money in the long run.
Right.
But what you do, and it affects your veterans as well, but what you do is take all of those specialty, everything in the community that can help, from counseling of all different types to medical treatment to housing to jobs, all of it, all into one court. And the people that can be filtered through come from our various departments, and you can almost spot them right away, the ones that should go into it.
Right.
Steve Horsford was a sponsor of it, and it almost made it. We were sitting there real quietly waiting for this to happen, but it went away. It'll come back, though, the next one. I know that she'll do it, and I want to be part of that.
Okay. Judge Lippis, we want to thank you for coming on the show. Could you give us your contact information for your website and
Yes.
phone number?
I will.
Okay.
On the air?
On the air.
Yes. My email is Debbie Lippis, Lippis, Debbie with an IE, at AOL.com. And my website is DebbieLippis.com.
Well, thank you so much, Judge Lippis. Looking forward to seeing you at the gala on the 18th.
I'll be there.
And the interview on the 25th.
What woman doesn't want to go to a ball?
Which those guys are a lot harder than us. Though.
That's okay.
We're little mouses to them, huh, Jim?
Yeah.
I'm ready for that.
This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jones for Veterans in Politics. Folks, we're going to take a commercial break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to have Cynthia Dustin-Cruz, who's a candidate for Las Vegas Justice Court.
Saturday nights from 7 to 10, it's The Chill Zone with your host, Randy M. Join Randy as he takes you through a journey of smooth electronic music and beyond. It's The Chill Zone with your host, Randy M. Every Saturday night from 7 to 10, only on VegasAllNetRadio.com.
Americans have been fooled by politicians about illegal immigration. They make you think that if you bring up this topic, you are a racist. Did you know that America is the only country on this planet that does not enforce its federal immigration laws? For the fear of being called a racist. I am for legal immigration. I was born on the island of Jamaica, became an American citizen, served 12 years in the U.S. military, served in Desert Storm, and received a Presidential Unit Citation, National Defense Medal, and Marine Corps Commendation. Our immigration laws serve a purpose. I understand that this country was founded on immigration, but there is a wrong way and a right way. I'm here to tell you that illegal immigration is breaking our federal laws. Why don't you call me a racist? This is Steve Sanson.
Peter J. Shields' World of Unexplained Mysteries.
Hi, I'm Dr. Peter J. Shield. Welcome to my world of unexplained mysteries. For over 30 years, I've been privileged to broadcast on radio and television around the world. Thanks to the iTex Barter Network and Vegas AllNet Radio, I'd like to invite you to join Dr. Lonnie Hammergren and myself as we go in search of some of the world's greatest unexplained mysteries. Each Saturday evening at 10 p.m., commencing Saturday, the 4th of February. I'm Peter J. Shield. Thanks for listening.
Peter J. Shields' World of Unexplained Mysteries.
Hey, listen up. If you're a military...
All right, great. Then it's a date. As Miss Nevada, my schedule can be really busy at times, but there is one activity I had to put on my calendar, and that's the Veterans Valentine Ball and Gala. February 11th is your chance to help local veterans meet with the state's dignitaries and feel the love for Valentine's Day. So, bring your sweetheart down to the Plaza Hotel on February 11th at 5:30 p.m. for a dinner, dance, and silent auction. Visit veteransinpolitics.com to purchase your tickets. I've got my date. Do you?
Well, we are back. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas of Veterans in Politics. We have Cynthia Dustin-Cruz, who is a candidate for Las Vegas Justice Court. I believe it's Department 5.
Department 5.
Yeah, I guessed. Department 5. Cynthia, could you I'm making her blush, Jim. I hope her husband is listening. Cynthia, could you give us a bio about yourself?
Of course. I've been here in Las Vegas since 1969. I grew up here, attended all of my school here. I graduated from UNLV back in 1993. Went out on my own, doing a little private training. Started my own business and decided to go back to law school. Went to Boyd School of Law, graduated from Boyd School of Law in 2003. While I was going to school, I worked for Wolfson and Glass, so that's Steve Wolfson and Jackie Glass. And in my last year, I was got the opportunity to do an externship over in federal court with Judge Mahan. Was on the moot court team. Coming out of law school after I took the bar and passed the bar first time, I did my clerkship with Judge Glass and went and talked to a lot of people about where I was going to end up going. And then Steve Wolfson came in one day and said, "Hey, I'd like you to come back and work for me." So I worked for Steve for a little over 2 years and then went out on my own, started my own practice. I currently focus in criminal defense representation, but I do juvenile courts and family court. But prior to that, I did do some civil, doing contract work and helping some people out with some eviction matters. And now I'm running for judge.
My understanding is, and I'm not looking at the chart, were they 5 in your race?
It started out, myself included, there were five candidates.
So there's 6 total?
No, actually there was 5. So there was myself.
Don't name the candidates.
Okay.
So there was 5 in your race, and 2 withdrew.
Yes.
Did you scare them?
I guess so.
And that leaves one other attorney, challenger, and the incumbent.
That's correct.
And yourself, which you're the only female in that race now.
I am.
You weren't the only female to begin with.
I was.
Okay. You know, they say it's statistically proven that when it comes to judicial races, the woman already has 40% of the vote. Did you know that?
I didn't hear that it was 40%. I knew that there has been a little bit more favorable voting for women, but I have not known that it was 40%.
40%.
Do you know why that is?
Steve Sanson's still talking, Jim Jonas.
That's okay. I interrupt you all the time. You should be used to it by now.
Because they say women are more compassionate making judicial decisions for the accused. That's one of the reasons. Go ahead, Jim.
No, that's what I was going to say.
Oh, okay. You were you are a criminal defense counsel.
I am.
Could you tell us your personal outlook on the coroner's inquest?
The coroner's inquest. It's kind of a difficult situation because due to some poor choices in kind of a quick situation, I think the community has lost confidence in some ways with Metro. And it's really sad that some decisions could lead to kind of tarnishing the entire department, because I don't think every police officer is a bad person. And the problem that we're going to have is that there's no easy fix to try to get the community back having confidence in Metro again. And the direction that they're trying to go, I don't think is going to serve anybody, mostly because it's moving so adversarial. But I think it's a difficult call. You have officers that are sometimes in situations that they have to make a split decision. And sometimes, in retrospect, that split decision may not be the best decision. But I think that there's also situations where that split decision was maybe not the best decision. And I think had things gone a little bit, maybe, I hate to use the word slower, that there could have been better decisions. But it's kind of like playing, hindsight is 20/20. It's really easy for us to look back and not know the dynamics of what were going on at that particular moment. But I do think that Metro's got to find a way to get the community back having confidence in them again. And I don't think this is going to be anything that we're going to filter out of very quickly. I think it's going to be a difficult road ahead of us to try to get back on track again.
Do you believe the Clark County approval of adding the ombudsman to the coroner's inquest was a good decision?
It can be. I think they had former Judge Wall coming in as ombudsman, and I think that was to try to help instill a little bit more with the community. It's difficult because now they want to have a victim advocate that's there questioning the police officers, but sometimes that may not be the right thing because this is an attorney who is a lot of time hired by the family that's pending civil litigation. And I think the questions may not be geared towards really finding what happened in the coroner's inquest. So I don't know how we can work to get around that, because you can't just submit questions before things happen because you don't know what's going to come out in court. But then if you're going to have a hired attorney coming in for the family, and that attorney is most likely asking questions for civil litigation down the road, I don't think that's going to help either. Then we become too adversarial. Maybe what needs to happen is just like we have an ombudsman, maybe we need to have a special, almost like a quasi-public defender who's there not to promote the victim's civil rights litigation or their civil actions, but to try to provide an additional voice of questions. It's a difficult situation because there's not an easy answer on this one.
How important do you think the position of a judge is in relations to other elected seats?
Well, the judiciary is extremely important. We're one of the three branches of government that maintains balances for the people. You have your legislative group, you have your executive group, and then you have your judicial branch. Being a judge is not all about throwing people into jail and throwing the book at people. Being a judge is about being that third-party balance to try to balance the laws with the executive branch and to try to provide a fair and impartial forum so that both litigants get the same opportunity before the court.
So I know you're going to know that I'm going to ask this question. Why is it that you feel that you need to unseat the incumbent?
Well, there's a couple reasons. I think the first and foremost that I've looked at Department 5 to unseat the incumbent there is this is a department where the judge has been saying very actively for probably about the last 2 years that he was going to retire, and then he filed again. So we do in our community elect our judges, and I find we have a lot of instances recently where we have elected officials that are stepping down, and it's becoming an appointment process. And that's not what our voters have spoken. They want to be able to elect their officials. So we do have a risk that this particular incumbent may not make it for his 6 years in term, and step down, it's another vacancy for an appointment.
Okay. How old is the incumbent, and does the incumbent have any kind of health issues that you know of?
Well, I don't know of his health issues, but and I don't think age is necessarily a determining factor as to why somebody can no longer sit as a judge. But he is going to be, I believe he's turning 77 this year, so if he does get elected, he's going to be turning 78 when he does, if he does get reelected onto the bench.
Is he experiencing any kind of memory lapse, memory lapse, or dementia, or anything like that? That would make you feel that he needs to be replaced?
I think part of his limitations that he's having right now is not so much age related, but it's almost a lack of wanting to get up to speed with today's world.
So he just basically doesn't have the drive. You don't see he has the drive anymore that's necessary for such an important position.
Well, I think it's more than just a drive. I think everybody would agree that in today's world, we are an internet world. If you refuse to embrace technology, if you refuse to stay up to date, because the law is an evolving, changing thing. Decisions now are almost available within hours of them coming down. And if you do not want to use technology and you don't want to get on the internet, then you can make some horribly wrong decisions, because if you don't know that decision coming down and you're not staying up to speed and you're waiting for something to be printed out and come to you, which is going to take months, you could be misinterpreting the law to the detriment of both parties there, because then that causes more appellate issues, and you could do some irreparable harm to one of your litigants. And I think that's a very critical thing. If you're going to be a judge in today's world, you have to stay up to speed, and that requires you to be on the internet, and that requires you to be embracing technology so that you are staying up to date on the evolving trends that law is having now. And that is one thing that my opponent does not do. And I think that does a disservice to the public, because there is that risk.
So what do you have to bring to the bench that's going to escalate the level of judgeship sitting in Department 5?
Well, what I do bring right now is in the last 9 years that I have been a practicing attorney, I have practiced in every court that is in Southern Nevada, and I have practiced in the Nevada Supreme Court. What that causes is, since I am a litigator, I appear in court on a daily basis, and I am sensitive to the fact that justice court can substantially affect somebody's life if there's a bad ruling. And not only that, but it affects the taxpayers, because it follows it up into the trial court, up into the Supreme Court, and even over into federal court. So what I bring is my experience as a litigator, as a practicing attorney, and that I've represented people on both sides of the table. So I bring that. And then I have, being part of the community, and having my father being a retired police officer and my husband being in law enforcement also, I think I bring a unique dynamic to the bench that I can provide diversity for the public and an understanding. It's not going to be all softballs all through there. Just because you've made some poor decisions does not mean you walk away from it, but there has to be both accountability and compassion.
So you just open up the door to another question by what you just said. You mentioned that your father was a police officer and your husband is in law enforcement.
That's correct.
Does that make you more in favor of police being on the bench when the prosecutor brings in the police to testify? Does that make you gear more towards the prosecutor?
No, not at all. Police officers are people too. Police officers can make bad decisions. Police officers can make bad calls. Police officers can misinterpret situations. But police officers have a vital role, and that is to protect society. And if they have followed all of the rules, then you can proceed fairly against somebody that may be accused of a crime. and that if they are going to be convicted, you can do that where you know that you have confidence in the fact that it was done properly.
Okay. Do you believe in the Constitution of the United States?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you believe that a judge should enforce laws already written, not legislate from the bench?
Judges should not legislate from the bench. We're not legislatures. We are the ones that are to interpret and apply the law.
What does interpret the law mean to you? Because some people, basically what Steve and I guess we're trying to get to on that one is that you always hear this about judges, right? You always hear, oh, they're not a strict constructionist judge. You know, they think that the Constitution's a living document, and so they can interpret these. They can interpret things rather than just read what it says. So, what would you come down on that?
Okay, I think that's where the law is an evolving and dynamic entity, because we have, as times go on, you have precedent that's being set. If there is a controlling authority, if there's a controlling rule of law, if the Constitution is clear, then that's how you apply it. Okay. If it's ambiguous on a particular issue, then there is a little bit of room for interpretation, but that's why you go to the legal research to verify that you're applying the laws correctly based upon precedent and clear interpretation.
Okay. Well, let me get your opinion on Veterans Court, Cynthia.
Well, you know, it's sad to say that the Veterans Court, the legislature came down to establish another diversionary court for the veterans. And I think it's very well founded, because people that are veterans sometimes do have some significant concerns that do need to be taken into account, even those people in the military, because I've represented both. Judge Delaney's trying to incorporate it slightly, but the problem is that it's not its own entity. And so Judge Tobiasen has established kind of like a filler in justice court to try to help people that are in the justice court system, to try to provide a dynamic that can help veterans if they're not having to be prosecuted on felonies, where we can keep them in justice court and get them some help and some services. I'm familiar with U.S. Vets and some of the programs that U.S. Vets does, and trying to get some people back with homes, clothing on their back, some meals, and maybe a job down the road. So I'm all in favor of it.
Okay. Well, Cynthia, thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Could you give us your contact information as far as your campaign is concerned?
Sure. My email is cdustin@dustinlaw.com, and my website is cynthiadustincruz.com.
Jim?
No, I have no other questions other than it was nice meeting you, and good luck in your race.
Thank you so much.
That's Cynthia Dustin-Cruz, who is a candidate for Las Vegas Justice Township in Department Number 5 for Justice of the Peace. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas with Veterans in Politics, folks. And I won't be here next week, but Jim will, and he'll be interviewing 2 North Las Vegas candidates. I believe Kali Kahuni, if I pronounce that name correctly. I'm just going off the top of my memory. And Jonathan MacArthur, both running for the North Las Vegas Justice Court seat to replace Judge Dahl. I will be at the Veterans Valentine's Day Bowling Gala, trying to set things up before everybody shows up at 5:30. This is Steve Sanson and Jim Jonas with Veterans in Politics.